Here we go. Episode 155 of the Trash Talk Business Podcast. I'm Andy Wines, your host and owner of Camel Crew Responsible Junk Removal. We're going to take our time every week to get together to grow, scale, and build our junk removal dreams. And today we're doing that now on a Friday. Getting double bonus episode this week. I'm joined by my good friend Ken Rusk. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. I like right now your camera's focused on your shameless self-promotion picture in the background and not you. This is why we can't have nice things like autofocus. I do the same thing. That's why I know you have to lean in and lean out.
I could probably fix that. I don't know what exactly it's happening today.
There we go. No worries. All right, now we're good. Now Ken's in focus. Actually, you know what, Ken? Let's just get right into it. You wrote a book. Let's talk about that. Why you wrote the book, how it helps and supports people, and then we'll see where the conversation goes from there.
Well, I've probably hired a couple of thousand people in the last 35 years or so, and you find that you almost become an involuntary life coach. I don't have any special training. I don't have any letters after my name, none of that. But you still try to help people out as much as you can, and so you end up doing a lot of coaching. I mean, through people's first credit card, their first, getting their driver's license cleaned up, the drill, right? Their first apartment, their first house, their first new car or whatever. And then onward and forward from that. So people were watching what I was doing here within the four walls of this company. And they were saying, what you do works so well. You should probably talk to, get that word out beyond just your company. So I started just jotting some notes down. I actually wrote a long letter to my daughter who was suffering from a pretty terrible disease at the time. She was only 12 and trying to get her through that. And lo and behold, I had 80,000 words, a bunch of great stories, and someone thought that it was book worthy. So here we are.
I love that. So I'm an author. You're an author. A lot of people ask about that process. And what you did is you wrote a manuscript. And I didn't realize as I wrote my book, like I thought, I wrote a book. It's like, no, you wrote a manuscript. And then there's all these other rounds of, what do you mean developmental editing? What does that mean? Right. And so a lot of people, I love that about you. And I went the opposite way. I said, hey, I'm going to write a book. And then I, did the traditional, outline book, development, editing, all the things. And I ended up with a book. So, and shorter, 20,000 words, which I thought was astronomical. So the fact you put 80,000 words on paper casually, obviously 35 years of experience, you had a lot to say. So what are those things? And what's the name of the book and the premise behind it?
Well, the book's called Blue Collar Cash. And it's basically a guide that teaches you how to think about what your future could be and what you want your life to look like. I mean, so many times, we live these reactionary lives where we react to everything. We react to stimulus, we react to people, to friends, to society, to our teachers, to, the workforce. We react to all these things rather than sitting down and proacting for ourselves. And this is a real simple play-by-play. I'm a simple guy. I never went to college. This is not a theoretical, 20,000 foot view where it's one PhD to another. The things I talk about in this book are so simple, you could use them this afternoon and start turning your life around. But what it really starts with is letting you know that, don't listen to everybody else. Listen to yourself. Listen to that core person inside of you, because you and only you know what your favorite things are in life. You and only you would design, for example, a vacation just the way you want it, or if you could design a new car just the way you want it. You and only you know those things. So we keep listening to these outside forces and reacting to them instead of saying, I'm going to go within. I'm going to give myself the trust to say, I know what the hell I want my life to look like. So why am I listening to everybody else? I'm going to sit down and start designing that.
So really, it's about casting that vision. I love that proact. So I was in Missouri this week doing a keynote, and I talk about it's an unconscious reaction to a stimulus or a conscious response to a situation.
Sure.
So I love what you're saying about being proactive, because when you proact, right, when you're being proactive, it's because you have a vision of where you're going. And then when a new situation comes upon you, right, the situation is either an opportunity or a problem, whichever way you want to look at it. I think about the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. When you know where you're going, you can orient what you're observing to where you're going versus we're just going to go there. The analogy, I'm writing my second book now, the analogy that Lynn, my business partner, in the book talks about is when you go on that vacation, like you talked about, you have a destination. What would happen if you said, all right, we're going to take 13 lefts, 7 rights, and wherever, and drive 5 miles, and then that's it. And then when we get there, that's our destination. It's like, well, you would never go on vacation like that, and yet people run their businesses and their lives like that every day. Like there's something you didn't want, and all of a sudden you saw it, you're like, oh, now I want it. It's like, well, hold on, what? You never even thought about this thing, and now all of a sudden you want this thing you never thought about. Or in business, when people say, hey, what do you think about this decision? I'm like, well, how does it affect your long-term goals? And people are like, well, I don't have any long-term goals. I'm like, well, then every decision seems like a good decision or a bad decision because you have nothing to compare it to.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think, I use the vacation analogy all the time because, here we are spending maybe 51 weeks a year reacting to everybody else's stuff. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm at my job. I'm at my family. I'm at my house. I'm reacting to all of these outside forces. And yet I take such pleasure and such solace in planning the vacation. And I plan it 4 months ahead of time. It's December. I'm planning spring break. I'm going to think about my trip to Florida. I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to stay in this hotel. I'm going to go to these restaurants. I'm going to fly in this airline. I'm going to get on the beach, put my feet in the sand. I'm going to have, Led Zeppelin on my little Go stereo. I'm going to have a margarita in my hand. I'm going to have the warm breeze, the umbrella. I mean, you feel all that when you go.
It's a vision. You're painting a vision. I can see you there. I can even see myself there.
Exactly. So if we're so good at that, Andy, why are we giving up control to the other 51 weeks of our lives to everybody else and every other thing? It really is silly. And when I tell people about this, all of a sudden these light bulbs go off, and the first thing they say to me is, why haven't I heard this before? Why didn't anybody tell me this? And it's just because our world is kind of programmed to keep you, just soldiering on, following the norm. And everyone's, either making opportunities or money off of that following. So it is an interesting thing when you say, okay, enough is enough, stop it. I'm going to start thinking for myself starting today. I'm going to look at what I want my life to look like. I'm going to draw it out in unbelievable detail. Maybe I'm going to Pinterest this thing, and I'm going to get all the things that I want to come into my life in front of me. I'm going to stare at those things and then allow that whole other side of your brain that nobody even knows they have, much less use, to work to push me towards, the chase and the achievement of these things. And that's where the beauty of life really is.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought about the theoretic, PhD to PhD. I read a book called Vivid Vision recently, and I really enjoyed it. And then when it came to the execution phase of Vivid Vision, I started to struggle. Even though they had examples of what a vivid vision looked like, it was that very theoretical. So how do you guide people within your book so it's more practical? Because that vision you cast about your vacation, like I can see you there with a margarita. Led Zeppelin and a little Bluetooth. You give me enough where I hear Toes in the Water. I think of Chicken Fried with Zach Brown Band, right? Like I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. Like I want that vacation.
And people tend to overcomplicate these things to the point where they think, well, I guess that's out of my control. I guess I can't do it. And that's what I'm saying. I've had 14 and 15-year-old kids in the inner city who, when I first walked into the room, looked at me like, what the hell are you doing here? And why should I listen to you? And within 2 days, I had them designing their very first pickup truck down to the most minute detail. The leather stitching and the wheels and the horsepower and the payload and the color. I had them designing these things and going, wait a minute, so I can control whether or not this comes into my life. And I'm saying you absolutely can if you listen to yourself and start trusting yourself that you own this. So anybody can do it. And if you're talking about the pleasure of anticipating a 4-month vacation, meaning between now and spring break, whenever that is, imagine having the anticipatory power of several different things in your life. Maybe they're 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road or longer, but so what? They're going to happen. They're when goals. They're no longer if goals. And again, I think having those time pathways is it's the whole power of living.
I love that. So in my first book, I read about that. The eliminate the word if to when. If is ambiguous. when is like, well, when is when? Oh, that's interesting. Right. And also I use when I do coaching, I teach people when then language, because we can what if things to death. Well, what if this, what if
Sure.
this, what if this, right? And as soon as you change it to what when, then all of a sudden it's like 3 to 5 possible outcomes, right? Because it's like, well, it's not actually gonna happen. It's like, well, then why are we talking about it? And then you can come up with when then language. When this happens, then we do that. When this happens, then we do that. This recently happened with my girlfriend and I. We're doing some remodeling at the house. And before we even had the contractors come in, we already said, this is our budget. We're going to establish our budget. So when someone hits our budget, then we'll continue the conversation versus waiting for all the numbers to come in and having no baseline. And then it's like, well, is it a good price? We don't know. Right. So we had the when then language. And turns out everyone was way over the budget we anticipated. So it's like, well, when then? And then we compared to doing it ourselves. And we're like, okay, now we're going to raise our budget up because we had established what the then was. When no one meets our budget, then we will look into alternate options. Not, well, let's look at alternate options first. And now we're starting to control the narrative. It's like Mad Libs. You know, you have half of it figured out, and then you input as things come in, and then you get more done in a shorter amount of time.
And I talk about this a lot. When you talk about options or goals, I mean, those words are some of the most overused words in the English language. I mean, look up goal. It means like 7 different things. So what I do, I just gave a keynote a couple of weeks ago to a large road building group. And one of the things that I told them was, listen, I want you to write down these words. I want you to write down wish, hope, dream, and goal. And they wrote them down. And I said, okay, now I want you to take that pen and I want you to scratch them out. Okay, because I want you to lose those words from your vocabulary. It doesn't mean I don't want you to wish for things or dream or hope for things. But if you really want one of these things, whatever it might be, you need to convert those words from wish, hope, and dream to timed pathway. Because if you don't have a timed pathway to get these things, then they're just going to remain in this la la land of someday. Okay, and you and I both know someday never comes, right?
CCR, there we go. We're up to our third band, CCR. Creedence Clearwater Revival, John Fogerty, someday never comes. Exactly. So hold on. Goal, wish,
hope, and dream.
That's interesting. So this is where you and I, we didn't even know this. In my book, I have shit words that do not serve. And a hope. So I gave a keynote this week, and I say hope, pray, believe. By themselves mean nothing. And people come to you and argue, like, well, I like the power of prayer. I go, okay, I didn't say prayer. I said pray. Because people are like, well, I pray this works out. It's like, well, what can we do so that it does work out? Or I believe this is a good idea. Well, why do you believe it's a good idea? Well, I just believe. Well, can we get some data to back that up?
Right.
Or my buddy Brad Herta, whenever someone says hope, you can be mid-sentence, pouring your heart and soul out, being vulnerable. And if you're like, I hope, he'll be like, hope is not a plan.
Yeah.
Like it's true. It's like, yeah, hope is not a plan. You know?
I had somebody the other day. I mean, if you think about it this way, let's just put this into like a typical scenario that someone can understand. I hope to make it to the gym 3 times this week. Okay, great. Good luck. Good luck with that. I can see by your body that you never do that. So good luck with that. Whereas I'm going Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3:00, and I'm going to meet my friend Joe. Boom. Now there's something different. And what's amazing about that is, Andy, it's so easy. Why are we teaching this in like junior high school or in high school? Why are we teaching all of this if then? Man, if you go to high school and if you get good grades and if you get a scholarship and if you go to college and if you get a degree and then if that job pays you well, then you can start living your life. If we could just flip that switch to start with what the then looks like first, you could probably eliminate Social Security as it exists right now, because people they'd be nearly as dependent on that. They'd be dependent on themselves, which is truly where every human being wants to be valuable and they want to contribute and they want to live off of what they create. So I think we're doing ourselves a disservice when we say, well, man, if you do all these things, then it's going to be good. No. You either start, you either happen to life or life's going to happen to you. And there's a big difference there.
I love that. Here, because we're in the habit here of creating or calling out language. One thing you said there, and this is something I'm being very conscious of recently and very critical of others, myself and others, is I think. So I did an episode a couple of weeks of my show, I think. Well, hold on. Of course you thought it, you said it. So when you say, I think, it's like, well, how much do you stand by that versus saying, we're missing this in high school?
Yeah.
When we teach this, we get off Social Security. Because then it is, I'm on this mountain and I'm willing to die for it. Come take it from me.
Sure.
And most people, what I realized is when I am confident in my language, the keyboard warriors of the world go away. They're looking for easy prey. Easy, right? Easy is easy, another shit word I use, right? Easy and hard. Because some things are so easy we don't do it. Some things are too hard, we don't do it. Versus simple and complicated. Right. And so the people that easy come, easy go, they go as soon as people like us stand for something. Because they're not willing to die for anything. Right.
Well, sure. And they realize the vulnerable, they look for the
Yep.
weak seals in your language and then they pounce. But, I look at it this way, Andy. I've always thought that, if you could say, I'm going to draw this vision of what my life is going to look like. This is the car I'd love to have, the house I'd love to have, the pet. Is it a dog or a cat? What color? What would you name it? This is how I'm going to treat my body. This is my sport, my hobby. This is my vacation. This is my family. If I could draw all that stuff out, it kind of is like, it's almost like a puzzle. Okay. I dump 1,000-piece puzzle on your table and I walk away with the box. You're done. I mean, you might get the edges, right? But without looking at what the puzzle is supposed to be, how can you build it? And I've heard a rumor that if you have 1,000-piece puzzle, you look at the box 100,000 times before you're done. And if that's true, why are we not doing that with our own lives, for God's sake? I mean, why are we not looking? Why don't we have the puzzle box for what our life should be in front of us so we can stare at it and then allow that RAS and all the things that to work for us? Because we have another whole side of our brain that none of us are using, and it's free. It doesn't require any training. You just have to sit there and start doing it. And life, when you get to be on the other side of 50 like I am, you realize that, man, these are little gems that people just need to know. Nobody's teaching them, so we have to start talking about it, which is why I'm glad you and I are doing these things.
Yeah, we get to start talking about it. We get to give it away for free. That's the beautiful thing. That's why I do the podcast. I get to give away the answers. I get to find people like you and share the perspective you have, because there's plenty of crap out there in this world telling you what you can't do and what you're not able to do. You talked about pre-programming in the book, The 4 Agreements. It talks about your parents, your preachers, and your teachers essentially pre-programming all these limiting self-beliefs that we inherit and carry through life. When we're born, we're not born inherently limited. We are limitless, and yet we have these limiting beliefs. And going back to the high schools, it comes back to the schooling system. The American education system is designed to crank out workers. Those workers that focus on you're right. They focus on the 2 weeks of vacation a year, and they're willing to sacrifice 50 weeks a year to go on their 2 vacations. They're willing to follow somebody else's plan, somebody else's dream for 50 weeks a year, versus having the creativity, opening up those parts of their brains, taking the chances to bet on themselves and actually paint a picture of what their life could be when they make certain decisions. The other thing I want to, go ahead.
No, okay. What I was going to say is the proof of what you just said is in some of the interviews that we've been doing in the past 5 or 10 years, because people are less prepared for life than they were 15, 20, 25 years ago. I mean, now you get people that, why are you here in an interview? You ask them, why are you here? And well, I'm here for a job. For what? Because I need to make money. For what?
Why?
Yeah. Bills. Okay, let's get beyond the bills. Now what? And they look at you like, wow, nobody in my lifetime has ever asked me what I want out of my life. And it's so fun. It's to see that light bulb go off and have them look at you like, I'm not prepared to answer that question because no one's ever asked me that. That right there is the original sin, Andy. I mean, having someone not be able to answer the question, what do you want your life to look like? Are you kidding me? You can't answer that question. So, man, if I was in charge of schools, I'd be going back into 6th grade and practicing this right now, okay, and doing it every year until they graduate, so that when they do, they're like, I'm in control. I'm in control of my thoughts. I'm in control of what I want. I'm in control of how I'm going to get there. I'm in control of my path, and I'm in control of my financial future. And I know it's a big wish, but I'd love to see that happen.
Well, you go. You said a wish. You just said it was a big wish. It's a timed pathway. Let's get you out there speaking to the schools, speaking to students, and speaking to educators. What's interesting is our society. I saw this stat the other day. Over the last 50 years, since 1975 to this year, college admissions have gone up. We are a more educated society than we ever have. But essentially, the advent of the computer in the 1970s took a lot of blue collar jobs out of the market, a lot of manual jobs out of the market. So now, since the mid 70s, 1975 to 2025, we are a more educated society and a dumber society.
Sure, and a more dependent society.
We are more dependent. We are less entrepreneurial. We are less capable. We are less able. 50 years ago, people changed their own oil, cut their own grass, made their own meals. Now, you don't have to put your pants on. You can have all those things come to you, right? Even to a point now, actually, car ownership is declining, and the amount of people that drive are declining because people are more and more okay with not even having the freedom of a car.
Sure.
Because they're living in urban areas where public transportation is available, or they're working from home. So we're actually declining as a society when it comes to freedoms, and that including freedom of thought. As you're talking, there's two particular Mark Twain quotes that resonated, and they're two of my favorite, right? The first one was Mark Twain talks about the two most important days in your life, the day that you're born and the day you figure out why. When you've never been asked the why, you never form. And it changes. I celebrated 21 years in the Army 2 days ago. 21 years in the Army. Why I joined the Army, thank you. Why I joined the Army at 20 is significantly different than why I stay in 21 years later. That's a beautiful thing about the why. It changes over time. The other Mark Twain quote that resonated with me, it's one of my favorites. Mark Twain said, "I never let my schooling get in the way of my education." Right? Go out. Learn, right? I graduated high school with a 1.8 GPA. I failed English class 4 times. I'm very proud of those stats because I was true to who I was. I was not your ideal student. And yet, I graduated college with a 3.85 GPA, and I've written a book, and I'm writing my second book, and I put out a blog every single week, and I love reading, and I love learning. High school wasn't learning. It was not a place where I flourished, right? So I'll take owner of that. And now thankfully, they have a lot of alternative schools. And here in the Midwest, I'm seeing more and more where people go to school from like 7 to 11 or like 8 to 12. And then the second half of their day, and they're going to class at a place of business, right? So at a machine shop, at a mechanic shop. And then the second half of their day, they're applying things learned in the morning practically to their job. So it's like, oh, we took geometry this morning. Now we're on a CAD, right, machine, and we're designing parts that we're going to be printing or manufacturing later in the day. It's like, I get behind that all day.
That is a beautiful story. And to go back a second ago, I love the fact that you caught me saying wish a moment ago, because I don't have a timed pathway right now to changing the minds of every high school in the country. I would love to have that time pathway, because I would do it tomorrow if I could. I'd go back into those schools and say, stop what you're doing. So I'm allowed to use those words if I don't have a time pathway to it. And if I could find a time pathway to change high schools, I would. But to your point, I was just in the Dakotas at this road building company. And one of the beautiful things that their schools have done around there is they have created these labs where you can go in and drive a virtual bulldozer. You can drive a virtual earth mover. You can drive a virtual truck, or you can do all these things. And the kids will go to school, like you said, they'll go to school till noon, and they'll go jump in one of these labs in the afternoon. By the time they come out, they're experts at driving these bulldozers. And by the way, driving a bulldozer isn't what it used to be. You're now driving a computer.
It's a computer. Okay? Oh, yeah.
And the computer has geographic maps loaded into it. It's got, all these sight lasers loaded into it. So it's way different than it used to be. And the beautiful thing about that is they recognize that, hey, why aren't these kids jumping in these $100,000 a year construction jobs? Well, because they don't know about them, and they don't know how to get to them. And so to your point, these companies are taking charge themselves, because they're not waiting for the high schools to say, hey, you know what? It might have been a mistake to eliminate shop class from all of our high schools, because now we can't find a carpenter anywhere. So yeah, I mean, I applaud those companies that are taking it on themselves to make that happen.
And AI and automation will take over a lot of things. I watched a documentary yesterday on trucking and what's going to happen here with trucking, and AIs are going to eventually take over a lot of stuff. And they'll say basically to get it to the last mile or get it into urban areas, which is where a lot of hours are chewed up, and how AI is going to impact the trucking industry. And I found it very interesting and fascinating.
Sure.
Even agriculture now, agriculture. You're sitting in a $300,000 computer that tells you exactly what path you're on, exactly the perfect, it can tell you
water,
exactly
the speed,
the water, everything,
yeah.
right? So agriculture, which is, I mean, we were hunter gatherers. I mean, it's one of the first jobs ever available, and yet it's gone high tech. Certain things, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, there is no AI for that to physically do the thing. And so you're right.
Yeah.
They got rid of shop classes years ago. And yet now plumbers, electricians, carpenters, they're making more money than most day one because of supply and demand. The other thing you brought up as far as operators, I worked concrete for years. I was the guy behind the shovel. Yet you had to be behind the shovel for 10 years before they gave you a semi-skilled job. And you had to do that job for 15 years. You were 25 years into operating a shovel before they let you on a grade out. They let you on a dozer or a front end loader. Now it's like, oh, you're 18 and you can play video games. Yeah, we'll take you today. Like, wait, it's complete abundance. There's an abundance because all the people like myself, I'm 40 now. I didn't stick around for 25 years to become an operator. Remember, even at UPS, it was 8 to 10 years in the union, loading package cars part-time before you could apply to be a driver. It's like, I ain't waiting. Like 20, 30 years ago, maybe people would stick around 8, 10 years doing a shit job. Now, people want that job instantly, and a little bit of skill gap can be taken, skill and experience can be expedited versus the wait in line and seniority, and someone has to die before you get an opportunity.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, you're not swinging 3-pound hammers and hitting one nail at a time anymore either. I mean, I watched a guy in Florida the other day. He had a lightweight fiberglass nail gun, and he was just banging nails out of this thing like crazy. He wasn't doing some of the manual motions, hurting his shoulder or his elbow or his wrist like they used to do. And so, it is amazing to me how much more accommodating, I'm not going to say easier, but more accommodating these jobs are now. And you can't look at what your grandfather did. You can't look at even what your father did, because the technology is so different, and the way we build things and the way we put things together is just so amazing. And for people to still, for people on the East and West Coast, or whoever you want to call it, the elites, to say, oh, he's just a plumber, he's just a carpenter. Well, I know that plumber, and that kid's got 6 vans, 12 employees, and he's making $500,000 a year. So let's not look down on the plumber guy, okay? I mean, I don't know who you think you are, but you're the one sitting there behind the desk with $300,000 in Ivy League school debt. Let's not compare what you are to the plumber, because this guy's got it figured out. That's for sure.
No, my ex, I dated a woman down in Chicago for a number of years, and all of her family were, you go to, parochial college or high school, then you go to either a parochial college or private college or a Big Ten school. Like, those are your two options, right? And then you go get the job. And then they meet me and they're like, why junk removal? Like, please help us understand this. I was like, it's in my veins. I grew up on it. Right. And I tell people all the time, I could go get a job making 6 figures, good 6 figures, 250, 300 a year. Probably. I don't know. Don't care. Because I'm not interested in having a job. I'm not interested in having capped earning potential. I'm not interested in doing what everybody else has done up until this point. I'm interested in paving my own path. Does that mean I'm going to work harder and make less money for a number of years? Yeah. You want to be an entrepreneur? I was teaching at a job fair 3-4 months ago, 7th and 8th graders. And they're like, well, how much money do you make as an entrepreneur? Right? Because they had like the 5 questions to ask. And of course, there's the airline pilot, there's the cop, there's the accountant, right? I mean, the village people were there, and then the junk removal guy. And I represented entrepreneurs. And when my mom texted the word just, there we go, just, because just is another one of those shit words. Because it justifies your bullshit. There we go. My mom had surgery this week. She's laid up, so my
I hope you're doing. I hope you're feeling better, Mom. Hang in there.
There you go. Actually, speaking of, shout out. Did you watch the draft last night?
I did not. No.
Okay, so in the draft, I flew in last night, so I was driving last night when it was going on. Anyhow, in the draft, as all the players were coming out through this tunnel, there was these green boards with all 32 logos on the boards, big, like 3 foot by 3 foot logos, all made out of wood, all recycled, recovered wood. And all that was developed by my brother. So my brother built all of the logos. He built all the logos for the draft. So they wanted hometown artists. And so my mom had surgery last week, but she's been on a high this week, seeing all the success.
That's fantastic. Tell me, I say congratulations.
Yeah. Sure. So anyway, so that wood comes from the projects we do in junk removal, because we're all about reclaiming and repurposing things. And so that's the joy, right? So when people talk about junk removal, it's like, well, I have a passion for the greater industry, right? Mm-hmm. You're a plumber. Well, you have a passion, right, for taking care of people in their houses. You do construction. You have a passion for creating infrastructure within your community. That there's that old adage, like, your father was in the trades because he can drive around any neighborhood and tell you which house he worked on. And right. And my father for 30 years has been putting doors in. He probably can't remember most people's birthdays, and yet he can tell you the color of the door and whether it was left hinge or right hinge in swing, right? And what neighborhood and the weather was the day he put it in. Because that's his craft. He feels great by providing safety and security to families. So some people look at it like, oh, he just puts doors in it for a living, right? Just puts doors in. It's like, no, he's providing safety, security, maybe some architectural decor design to somebody's home. They're letting them into their home. That's huge.
It's interesting that you say that, because at this road builder speech that we gave, one of the things that we talked about is what they believe they did. And some of the people said, I build roads, I connect one town to another or whatever. And I said, well, let's get a little deeper than that. I think that when my wife is pregnant, and then she found that she was about to give delivery to our baby girl, and then her water broke, I think the fact that she could get into some type of machine and roll over some pavement on the way to the hospital was a really beautiful thing, because she was stressed out, she was worried, she was alarmed, and she didn't have to worry about getting to the hospital because you made her a beautiful road between point A and point B. Or perhaps your grandpa and your grandmother are taking the old convertible out, and they're going out for a date, and the top's down, it's a warm sunny night, and they're driving down the street to the drive-in they used to go to. That is what you do. Mm-hmm. You connect people's opportunities, and you make memories happen. You don't build roads. And they looked at me like, holy cow, you know what? I guess you're right. So you have to put, let's talk about it. By the time you put your feet on the floor in the morning to get out of bed and go to your church or school or your office, whatever, you're crossing 10,000 blue collar jobs that are still viable today. So, I mean, the whole thing about the stigma of that, that's just baked into the college mindset. And I get that. But if you want to know where the real supply and demand is, like you said, where the supply is low and demand is high, that's where the money goes. You really have to take a look at some of these opportunities. That's for sure.
Well, that's the thing. So I looked this up, a couple months ago. 13.7% of workers are blue collar in the United States. 13.7. I would have thought it was 50%. No, 13.7 of us are blue collar, and we're the one that build the infrastructure, right? We're the ones. Everything you do comes down to blue collar work. Like, I always thought about bankers. What do bankers do? Bankers buy and sell money, right? And some people are excited about that, right? And I was always like, they don't do anything. No. Now I look at it like, oh, no, we need them, because when I need a loan to go do something, I need the banker to sell me money. When I have money, I want them to buy my money and give me interest. So I'm like, oh, okay, I understand how bankers play. That's the challenge. It's the recognition that it's not white collar, blue collar. It's not one's better or the other. It's we need everybody. It's that acceptance that everybody is valuable. There's this idea in our society is like we put certain people, doctors, lawyers, clergy, right? We put them in this pedestal, and then there's the middle tier management, and somewhere towards the bottom is that service employees and blue collar workers. It's like, well, remember when you go to a restaurant, right, and you get really shitty service, you're like, oh, that was terrible. And then you go to a restaurant, you get really good service. It's like, don't you want really good service? Well, why don't we treat people really well? Because what they're doing is important, or it's your craft. Whatever, I don't care what your craft is. Be great at your craft. Again, some people look at me as I pick up trash for a living. It's like, okay, I'm bottom of the barrel. And yet I look at myself as a professional. I look at it as how do we increase advocacy for our industry? How do we make our industry better? How do we make us more professional? I speak all over the country and focusing on recycling. We have the first opportunity. We're the first line recyclers. We have the opportunity to go in people's homes, remove items, and then find a new home for them. There's not many other industries that can have that impact on two households and be the cat house in between. Versus saying, "Oh, I put shit in a truck for a living and dump it at the landfill." It's like,
well, you know, when I did research for the book Blue Collar Cash, one of the things that I came upon was, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and this data is about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years old. There's 167 million people considered full employment in the United States. 77 million of those people do something with their hands. The thing is they're not all classified as blue collar workers because people misclassify a lot of people thinking, well, only if you're holding a brick in your hand are you a blue collar guy or a shovel or a pipe wrench. But actually there's a lot of people, there's almost half the people in this country still do something with these two things, you know, on a daily basis. And you know, if you look at bakers and estheticians and hairdressers and, you know, chefs and all these types of things, they're still creating a product or a service or a software or something. And it really is a sad, kind of a sad, I don't know, story when you think about how one group of people knows nothing about another group of people. And then when they find out, holy cow, these people are making a boat ton of money. Wow, I never knew that. I just had this automatic stereotype, you know, this automatic stigma that I applied to these people. So it really is crazy because some of the most successful people that I know are all blue collar entrepreneurs. And so it's a pretty cool thing. And the reason that isn't out there is because nobody asks us about it. You know, they go along their merry way as they're white collar people and they just don't ask us. So when they find out, when they're shocked, it's, you know, okay, that's fine by me.
Well, that is because the education system they go from you know, high school to college to more education, right? Academia. They never get out of this academia bubble. And so kids are now pretty much exposed to what do your parents do and what do your teachers do.
Right.
Talk about that's kind of their exposure. Maybe it's like a friend's parent or something. I was fortunate that most of my friends' parents worked for a living. You know, I say that right with air quotes, worked. You know, like my best friend at the time, his father owned a pizza place. Right. So Marco, actually, I'm attending his funeral this weekend, of all things. And Marco's Pizza, like I grew up working at the pizza shop. Like as a kid, we would go in there on Saturday mornings, have to, you know, cut mushrooms and cut potatoes. That was always his thing. It was, you can have a sleepover. I'll take you to McDonald's in the morning, and then I'm going to get like 3 to 4 hours of work out of you. And I was like, this is the greatest deal ever. And then realized, like, yeah, in retrospect, man, he was running a racket. What a great racket he was running, you know? But he worked with his hands for a living. That's, and owning a pizza shop, like I thought that was like the pinnacle of success growing up. And I worked at a gas station. I saw the guy that ran the gas station. His name is Roger. And I'm like, man, these guys are killing it. They are their own boss. And it's like, most people don't look up to pizza shop owners and gas station owners as people they want to be like. And it's like, no, that's absolutely what I want to be at. You know, my grandfathers were farmers. My dad was a remodeler. My other grandfather was a dentist and owned his practice. It's like, all I wanted to do growing up was to own a business. And I tried all the other stuff. I joined the military. I worked for other small businesses. I worked for corporate America. I fit out of all those places. I fit in as an entrepreneur in the blue collar world. That's the world I love living in.
Yeah, I've got an interesting story for you. So a very good friend of mine, his name is Pat Giamarco. He is the founder of Marco's Pizza.
Yeah. So Marco here locally, one shop. Marco with a K. You're talking about Marco with a C. Yes. Yeah, Marco with a C.
He's got. I mean, there's a couple of thousand companies. He started with just one, and he built it to a couple of hundred, and now it's a couple of thousand. And to your point, I talked to him about the opportunities for pizza shop owners, and he's like, you can't believe the money you can make owning one pizza shop. I mean, and God forbid you own 2 or 3 of them, and you get some managers in there who can make money themselves. It's a pretty good deal to do that, and and they really support you in getting your opportunity off the ground. So that's a very well-run organization, as are most of those franchises. But it's to your point, people will go, oh, he owns a pizza shop. Well, no, he doesn't. He owns 3 of them and he's killing it. So it's amazing how preconceived these ideas come, right?
That's interesting. Yeah, because I always looked at Marco. He went on more vacations than anybody else I knew. He was going to Vegas a couple times a year, going down the Caribbean a couple times a year. Yeah. He had a nice house, right? Because, hey, again, it comes down to your craft. What is it? It really, what you do is less significant than how you do it. We were talking about this the other day. So my next book I'm writing called Numbers Fucking Matter. We were talking about accountants. It's like you can get your CPA and be a terrible accountant. And you could be a bookkeeper with no credentials whatsoever and know the inside and outs of people's books, right? So it's again, it's not what you do is less significant. It's how you do it that really matters.
And also what and why you're doing it. What you're doing it for and why you're doing it. Yeah.
Well, your why, again, Simon Sinek's begin with why. Your why will always drive. And when your why is to make a paycheck, you can make a paycheck anywhere. And also when your why is solely to make money, there's yes, in business, making money is number one priority. And there's a lot of other whys behind why you make money doing what you do. Because when all you do is chase money, you're going to, me, everybody, right? You're going to get lost along the way, chasing that almighty dollar and not doing all those other things that really fuel your soul. Like you're talking about educating the youth, and you wrote your book.
Yeah, I think
you wrote it.
People need to get back to understanding that you're really chasing memories, because at the end of your life, he who has the most memories wins, in my opinion, the most and best memories. And if it takes money to make some of those memories happen, fine. But you're not just going to go bathe in a bathtub full of $100 bills, right? No, you're gonna use that money to create great moments for you, for your family, for your friends, and you're going to surround yourself with hopefully with photographs and video and memories of all those things. Because we are on this earth for around 90 revolutions, and we're on it for the purpose of living as well as we possibly can and to serve ourselves and our families and other people. So I think the guy who collects the biggest scrapbook, he's the winner, in my opinion, as far as memories go, because chasing dollars, like you said, that's a futile and usually short-lived pathway, that's for sure.
Oh, I love it. I wrote down some notes. One thing I wrote down, you said RIS earlier. What does that mean? What is an acronym for?
RAS, Reticular Activating Systems. Yeah.
RAS. Explain that.
So I was talking to Jared Robbins. Tony Robbins wrote a little forward piece for my book, which I was very grateful for. But yeah, I was talking to his son, and one of the things that he said was, we used to think that the law of attraction, something that you wanted to bring into your life, was just like something that was just kind of a spiritual or kind of a karma thing. And now we're learning that if you want something to come into your life, whether it's a relationship or a new car or whatever it might be, if you have a vision of what that is, a very clear one, and you leave it out in front of you where you can see it all the time, like the puzzle box. Mm-hmm. What happens is you have these neurotransmitters in your brain that fire these thoughts back and forth between your left and right brain and between your brain cells. And what happens is the more you stare at something you want to come into your life, the more those little neurotransmitters fire to the point where it's one constant stream of thought. And when that happens, it's called a bridge. And when the bridge is built, now your brain thinks it kind of already owns that thing. And so what it does is it puts your body in an involuntary but intentional mode of going to seek out that thing. And it helps you with your awareness. It helps you with opportunities. It helps you with your initiative. It helps you with your ability to work hard. And it steers your body towards gaining the very thing that you've been staring at. And I thought, how beautiful is that? Because it's not just a theoretical thing, it's a scientific thing. Mm-hmm. And also, if that's true, why are we not allowing that power, which is 50% of our brain that most of us never use? It's like having a whole nother Ken or a whole nother Andy standing right next to you, pushing you along towards that new pickup truck or that vacation or that hobby or that health goal or whatever it might be. It's like having a whole other person doing that. So if it's reticular, meaning you see it, it's activating inside your body. It becomes a system. And so, I thought, how awesome is that we have this software in our brains, but yet no one knows how to use it. Nobody even knows that it exists, and we're not taught it in school. So we have to stumble upon this on our own. And that's why I shout this as often as I can. See what you want, put it in front of you, stare at it, make sure that it's something that's important to you, that you want to manifest into your life, and then watch what happens. I've been doing it my whole life, and it works like a charm. It works every time. So yeah, that's my long-winded answer with what RAS is.
I love that. No, it is. You said it. You said it earlier, and I wrote it down, and I'm glad you articulated it there. Because I often talk about that, when, especially with my keynotes, is when talk about manifestation, and again, it's the analogy. When you think about a red car, you're going to find a red car, and
Right.
what ultimately what you're doing is you're in that, going back to the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. You're constantly reorienting to that thing you want, and your brain is processing it in the background subconsciously, so it's looking for those opportunities. I as you're saying that, I thought about how I've been staring at my driveway for the last 7 years. We have a parking lot driveway out here to the east of our property, and I'll stare at it, and I'm like, okay, what does it look like when there's concrete there? What does it look like? Because I knew where I was going to pour. 2 weeks ago, we poured the concrete, and it's like, yep, it looks 90% the way I thought it was going to look. And
Right,
it's because I've been thinking, right? And it's like, okay, now where are the lines going to go? And I remember the other day, I'm like, oh, how many stalls can we fit there? And then I Googled it. When for 24-foot trucks, when you park them at a 45-degree angle, you need 14 feet. So I'm going to give 15 feet because I'll be a little generous. I'm a gentleman like that. And we have, 120 feet to work with. So I can have 8 parking stalls at 15 feet wide. I'm like, okay, I visualized it. I asked the question. Obviously, we got the guy coming in to paint the lines. It's like, see, that parking lot doesn't happen out of nowhere. Even our business, I go back to the movie Twister. This is where I always go back to. So the movie came out like 93. I always knew I was going to have a business one day. And do you remember the movie Twister with Bill Paxton and Philip Seymour Hoffman? And was it?
It's been a long time since I've
was
seen
it Helen Hunt?
I actually loved Philip Seymour Hoffman. I thought he was
the best. Yeah, up there. So he was Dusty in that movie. And in that movie, there was 2 very distinct camps. There was the guy who was in The Princess Bride. He was also in Glory. Anyways, he was they had all the technology. They had all the best trucks. They had, they all wore black uniforms. They were the antithesis of like the bad. They're the bad guys, kind of, right? Because they're chasing the storms. And then they had the other team where it was like, they had the guy that had the station wagon, you had the guy that had the RV, you had the pickup truck. It's just this hodgepodge group of guys. And I always thought about that with my company. I was like, who do I want to be? Do I want to be that perfectly aligned company, or do I want this group of ragtag individuals that happen to work together? And for years, that was always what I went back to when I said, what does my team look like? Because I want the systemization that the one team had. And I also want the autonomy and flexibility of the other team.
Right.
So with our company, it's like, well, we have the uniforms. Our trucks are wrapped. We have standards. And yet we embrace people that look different than us, that think different than us. And that allows me to have both. So I go back 30 years to a random movie, and that's where I started planting this idea of what is the team of the company that I own someday looks like. And so now when people say, how did you design the uniforms? How did you design the field, the look? It's like, it was always there because I'd always thought about what does my company look like someday? What does it feel like? What's the attitude when you walk in here? And so all the things that we've built within this company were a vision way before there was a plan, way before there was a pathway. And it was creating those pathways because then when the opportunities arose, right, they talk about luck as the intersection of preparation and opportunity. I took all this time in my life preparing for the day when I got to make that decision, right? And
I think what's important,
what are we doing to build this company?
I think what's really important, Andy, is how specific you got with your thinking. I mean, when you just mentioned the concrete driveway, how many people think about the expansion joint lines on a concrete driveway? Nobody, right? But
no.
You did.
Oh, yeah. So,
people wonder, well, what do you mean by lines? Well, there's expansion joint lines and there's also parking lot lines. I have a friend of mine that actually does parking lot striping. So the thing is you got very specific with
Yep.
your thoughts. You didn't just land at, I need a parking lot someday.
Yep.
You went, okay, I need to do this with these many trucks. I need to put this there. So you got, and that's where people tend to drop it. That's why I say, don't wish and dream and hope for something. Create a timed pathway to it. And the only way you can create a timed pathway is to get very specific about what it is you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
B, you have to break that thing down into pieces, whether it's weeks of time or dollars and cents or budgeting or whatever. And then C, you have to put it into some type of launching this thing where you're saying, okay, a year from now, I'm going to have that parking lot. It's going to cost me $30,000. So I'm going to need to save $600 a week. And I'm going to, every Friday, I'm going to put six. And then you have that written down somewhere, or it's in your brain to the point where it's now driving you. But what most people do is they just stop at, I hope I get a parking lot somewhere.
You're dead right. Last year, I got the quotes last year. I put it in the budget this year. I remember it was like, do I want 6, 7, or 8 inches of concrete? Do I want rebar? And like, nope, road mesh is the way to go. So 7 inches, road mesh, saw cuts, not wet cuts, but saw cuts, right? Yeah. Every single detail I had down, even to a point where I'm like, okay, I know there's a spot, there's a stone right below me where I'm at in the building where it's a transition stone. It's on the foundation. It had a big crack in it. So it's like, yeah, we're going to, even though it's on the inside, I want to get rid of that crack. I'm not going to pour $100,000 of concrete and have one crack at that transition point. So it's like, even when I said that, the guy goes, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right. Because I'm like, yeah, no, pull that one little stone out because it drives me mad. And the more detail, because then every time there's a question asked, I'm like, there it is. And now I stand here, I look at this concrete, I got to puff my chest up a little bit. I'm like, we did that. We made that happen.
Look at the words. I need to jump in here because look at the words. I pay attention to words. You started out with, I know, which meant you were sure about something. You want, I'm not. Those are all very definitive things. It's not, I'm thinking, I'm hoping, I'm optioning, I'm dreaming, I'm wishing. I mean, that's the whole difference. So even the language that you use convinced me that this was going to happen. Okay, I can see the parking lot. I don't even know where you live, and I know what this parking lot looks like the way you described it. So that to me is all of it. And I don't care if you're a parent of a 16-year-old person right now. You need to get them doing this type of training. And I even have a course. It's a $179 course, and I say that because I don't make money with it. I donate out the money to giving these courses away to first responders and Gold Star families. But I have this course that actually I give to people with the book, and it teaches them how to do what you just did with the concrete parking lot, or what I just did. This isn't a thing for me. It's a way of me giving back. This course cost me way more than the $179.
Oh, I know.
I just did it because I was tired of people reading books and going, oh, wow, that book was cool. Well, hey, how did it change your life? Well, I don't know. I mean, what specific thing did you use out of that book? I don't know, but it was a good book. Baloney. If you're going to do something, if you're going to read Andy's book, if you're going to read my book, whatever, take action. I mean,
do something
now, this afternoon, do something. And if the very first thing is listening to what we're talking about, which is building a very specific vision for something you want to bring into your life, then Andy and I would have both won today for sure, right?
So actually, here, Taylor, come in here. I want Taylor, my producer, to come in real quick. The visualization. It's so interesting. You picked up on 3 sentences in that dissertation that I had there. Taylor, shoot the camera on the board right there. So right over my shoulder, right on the other side of the camera. Yep, I have these 6 most powerful sentences. And I wrote this, so it's for my other show I do. See if we can turn this on. Oh, that's not plugged in. Anyways, all right. Oh, and it's back. It's in reverse. All right. Well, he's going to turn that light. All right. So the 6 most powerful ways to start a sentence. And you picked up on 3 of them I had in one little thing. I am, I can, I feel, I know, I want, I will. In that order. All right. Thank you, Taylor. So in that order, I've realized that is what gets me going in life. And you hit a couple of the other ones that I talk about. I'm thinking, I'm talking, I'm trying. All you're doing is lying.
Right.
I think means I think means I don't know. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Even to the point in the concrete. I remember I said, oh, I want 7 inches with rebar. And the guy goes, well, based on the size of this and what you're doing, actually concrete or road mesh is going to be better. I go, sounds good. Like that is how unwilling I was to argue that, because I'm like, I'm hiring someone smarter than me.
Yeah.
Right. And he goes, no, actually, this is the spot you want rebar, tie in the old stuff. The rest concrete mesh, road mesh is gonna be better. I go, sounds good. And I asked like 3 other people, including my dad who poured concrete. He goes, oh yeah, you want road mesh. I'm like, all right, okay. Right. I knew something. I knew rebar was better than no rebar, and now I know something new, and now I move on. Which that's the other thing, and we'll start wrapping up here, is when I start sentences like this, I'm also willing to learn. When I say this is what I want, and then someone, why do you want that? I was like, oh, that's a very good question, right? Because it's like I'm gonna stand on this hill, and it's like, come at me. Let the more people argue with me, the more I learn. The beautiful thing is when someone presents a new idea to me, one of 2 things happens, and I win either way. Either I double down on what I thought before because I've thought it through one more time, or I learn something new, and I adjust my life by 1 degree for the better. 1 degree over time is astronomically different. And so that's what I love about being willing to stand and be willing to die for certain things. It all comes down to that language. So you picked up on that. Obviously, I wrote a book about words, so I picked up on that. It is really that simple. Let's get to the close here with you. Talk about your course, talk about your book. How can people find you? How do you make the world better? And how can people contribute to that?
Well, the first book is called Blue Collar Cash, and it's for anyone who wants to start planning what they want the rest of their life to look like starting this afternoon. I mean, you pick it up, and from the very first chapter, it talks about what you can do to start thinking about what your life could be. I also made an accompanying course with it. It's real easy. It's 8 sessions. It's 45 minutes a session. It can take you a week or a weekend, depending on how aggressive you are. And it really makes you start to put the processes about the book into play. And I guarantee it. I guarantee when you do this, your life will change. I've had it marketed and shopped, and it comes back at 90% approval ratings, which is really awesome. You can find all of that at kenrusk.com. I'm halfway through my second book because the people that helped me with the first one, HarperCollins, they said, all right, on your next book, let us know what you want to do. And now the answer is they want me to write a book where, how do I create culture as a boss, owner, or manager to attract the person that Blue Collar Cash would have inspired. And so one's on the one end, one's on the other. That book is halfway done. You can find all this stuff at kenrusk.com. You can also see me on Instagram at kenruskofficial, through all my socials at kenruskofficial. And we're having a good time.
Perfect. All right. What's been, we'll get to the big finish here. What's been your top takeaway from today's conversation?
I think that people, we owe it to ourselves once we've become successful. And I look at, I've been very blessed, very grateful, very honored, very humbled by my success. I get it. I worked hard for it like you did, but it is incumbent upon people like you and me to turn around now that we've hit the top of the mountain, and to reach down and bring somebody along with us. And I love what you're doing so much, because you might say the same thing I'm saying or something different, but we're close, and we're reaching people. And I just think I honor you for what you do, and I like what I do, and I think it's up to us to pass on to the next generation and help hopefully shorten the learning curve on some of these very valuable life practices that make life worth living.
No, I appreciate that, and you're absolutely right. It's I find myself surrounding myself more and more in life with like-hearted individuals, not necessarily like-minded. But we came from 2 different pathways, and we came to a very similar conclusion because the heart was there, which is I'm reaching up and someone's pulling me up, and as I go, I'm reaching down and pulling somebody up with me along the way, and because you choose to. You talked about that a lot with your coursework. It's the course you built. You chose to do it, not from a dollars and cents standpoint, from a philanthropic standpoint. How can you have a greater impact in this world by working smarter, having the course developed and people self-guided versus working harder? My top takeaway was your time pathway. I find myself often using the word goal, and I'm absolutely guilty of having these goals without a plan. And so I really like this timed pathway, because now it's a path, and like any other journey, once you get on the path, the path may change, right? Like the mountains that way will get there, and yet there's this pathway to get there, and it's about beating the feet. It's about keeping moving and moving forward and say, okay, we're going to get to that point at this time,
Yeah.
And now I really like timed pathways, so I'm going to take that away from you. So I really appreciate your time today, Ken. For the listeners out there, get a hold of his book. Get on that course. Take the time in a weekend or a week. 8 sessions at 45 minutes can change your life. I hear a guarantee in there.
Yep.
I'm excited about that. I'm going to pick up a copy of your book and pound through it and read through it, because a lot of things that you are great at, culture, for example, that's something we're working on here. And that's a great gap I have in my game, and great opportunity for me to build a culture here at Camo Crew where people want to work here, because it's about why we do what we do and how do I attract those best talent. So also looking forward to your next book. So Ken, appreciate your time. On behalf of Ken, our guest, Taylor, our producer, I'm Andy Wines. Thank you for joining us on another amazing episode of Trash Talk Business Podcast. See you.
Thanks for listening. Tap subscribe or follow to get the latest episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a review and tell a friend to listen. To learn more, visit trashtalkbusinesspodcast.com. Bye now.